Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Full Circle. It's the last week of the World Cup on the way in. The second to last week is finished up. The finals are done, and we are into grand finals this week. So this is the last prediction stream for Full Circle. We might have another couple OWC related podcasts after this, but this will be the last one for a recap and predictions in the same episode. I'm Dio. I'm here for this one alongside T1G, iFlame, Doomsday, and Miles for the very last recap and prediction stream. How's it going, gentlemen?
It's going
Fantastic.
very well.
Hey,
We've got some crazy matches this weekend, and naturally, I think we have to blame Dio for that.
That's true. Yeah? No?
Yeah.
it's always Dio's fault.
I did my best. But alas, we still have a few matches to go through. So we're going to go through, as always, the losers bracket first, and then talk about the winners bracket last week as well, before going on to the overall match predictions for the grand finals. So let's go ahead and start off with the first of two losers bracket matchups last weekend, Australia versus Russia.
So I feel like this was like the match of the week that went most how we expected it to, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was pretty much an expected result. Nothing crazy. I mean, it could have been a little bit closer. Russia had two maps. They lost by 200K, but even then, felt like Australia was in the driver's seat the whole time. You know, they had pretty decisive victories on the maps they did win. The one bright spot, I guess, is Russia beat Australia on a speed map, as did Germany in their match. So, you know, shows that that Australia are not completely unbeatable on speed, although they're certainly very hard to beat. But yeah, I don't feel like there's all that much to say about this map. It was obviously an insane performance from MREC, and otherwise exactly as expected.
On the picking, kind of interesting though. Like, I mean, I suppose it makes sense. You're up against Australia. You don't want to pick too many mechanics into them, but they hedged all their bets near enough on picking all of the control and all of the gimmick, which I don't really see as like a very Russian style of picking. But I like the fact that they were trying to switch it up to try and outfox Australia a bit. It didn't really work though, and I mean, the few times that a lot of control has been picked into Australia, it hasn't really worked, but it showed some sparks of life in the second half of that game. But I like the fact that they were trying something a bit different, knowing that if they went head on onto some of those speed maps and some of those aim picks, it probably would have been pear-shaped either way. So fair play for that. I found it quite interesting though that they spec'd really hard into it, like 3 or 4 picks, just sticking to their guns, even though it wasn't working. But it was brave.
Mm-hmm. One thing about this match I want to point out is I think unfortunately after it, Ciccone had kind of a cryptic tweet that I think a lot of people are interpreting as him perhaps quitting OSU after this. He got his first SS rank ever, actually, on Okairi Nasai, that Azer map. And I don't think he's going to be coming back next year.
Wow.
That is, I mean, that is the Azer map, right?
That is
like,
the Azer map, yes.
It's like
a 4-way collab map, right?
Yeah, I think it's like a 4-way collab. But
yeah, it probably is, but I just remember that and Everlasting Message. Those are the Azer maps to me. But yeah, I mean, to Ciccone, man. I mean, if this is his last run with Russia, that was hell of a tenure for him. One of their top players for as long as he's been with them.
And he played really quite well in that match. I mean, the reason they won that first pick, right, was it was him FCing on Popipo. He got the top score in the lobby. Only FC top scored by like 300K on that map. Put up some really good scores throughout this match as well. So, I mean, if you're gonna go out, good a time as any, gonna rush it back to the top 6 for the first time in quite a while, silencing a lot of people that have been joking about the semifinals curse, semifinals wall, all that sort of stuff. So, shout outs to Ciccone. He's been like, I feel like one of those guys. You know, he never really came as a top tournament player, right? He's never been a Malashevsky. He's never been one of those kinds of guys, but he's like the immediate tier below where he's really good and would make almost any team better. And I don't think he's gotten nearly enough credit for that as a tournament player because he mostly gets known for like the Echo, Smoke, and solo scores and not having any SSs. But dude has been very, very good in tournaments for quite some time. So much respect.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember. I think before he renamed Ciccone, I think he still had his other name. Was it Lever Russian? It was
Yep.
it.
Yes,
In,
Lever Russian.
Lever
Yeah.
Russian. Yeah, wasn't it one of
called?
Charlie's tournaments where
Yeah,
he
yeah.
ran up
Yes,
to like
yes.
fourth place out of
Top
friggin'
two.
nowhere?
Top two, I
Yeah,
think.
he was
Oh, it
in
was top
Grands
two,
against,
was it?
He was in Grands against Utami, right?
No, he beat Utami and was
Or
in
he
Grands
beat
against
Utami to get
Faxe,
to
right?
Grands.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was sick. So, good a way to go out as any if that was actually quitting or hiatus for him. And obviously, Russia top 6 for the first time since 2019 is awesome. So, this was a really, really solid match for. It was a better match for Australia than for Russia. I think Russia had their solid matches last week where they got into the top 6, but definitely still very good from Russia to get a couple of points against Australia. And on to the next match last week, which was Germany versus the United Kingdom. This was a hell of a match. So Germany just went ahead and banned out DT3 and FreeMod 2. United Kingdom banned out NoMod 5 and Hidden 3. So neither of these teams really wanted to play speed all that much into each other. And after that, UK had first pick. They lost their first pick. Germany won theirs. UK lost their second pick. Germany won theirs again. UK lost their third pick, and Germany won theirs again. So this match started out 6-0 in favor of Germany. It did finally get to 6-3 with a string of wins there for UK in the back half of the match, but ultimately Germany ended up closing it out 7-3 on the FreeMod 1. And I think this match really just solidified that Germany is not to be messed with. You look at the history for this team and what they've done in OWC over the last 10 or last 7 years, and it's a team that is going to have a very, very hard time dropping matches up until the very last few in the tournament.
These teams tricked us, bro. They just tricked us.
They did.
Like UK has this insane run the week before, wins on tiebreaker, has all this momentum, wins every map in common in semifinals, and then goes down 6-0 in like half an hour.
On the head-to-head, yeah.
Like, I don't understand, man. We got tricked so bad. Germany is just way better than we gave them credit for, and UK, they were just overmatched in this one. I don't even think they were like bad or anything. Germany was just better. I mean the 6-0 or the 5-0 prediction was kind of misleading, obviously, since we all said we expected it to be close, but I felt weird with that match going the way it did. But yeah, you just can't bet against Germany. They're in like a tier of their own, it feels like, at this point, where they will just always get like top 6, top 4. Yeah. And they got to those 2 grand finals. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Like they got to those 2 grand finals, lost to United States, and then they've just stayed in this tier where like they don't lose to anybody below them and they don't beat the teams above them, and they're just chilling there, and it's done them well. I don't know, man. Yeah. That match was weird.
They're reliable. I mean, you can never underestimate Germany, and I think when I did the predictions there, I was saying Kriller and Whitecat needed to show up to make things happen here, and they certainly did. Certainly Whitecat stepped up a lot, and I think once you start hitting those harder map pools, the skill cap is naturally going to show. It definitely showed here. But even then, the mechanics head-to-head, it just did not happen for the UK. I think what it highlighted, though, is I think the big difference between the UK in this game compared to the ones we've seen before is in the earlier games, Mahmood has been critical to their success on the aim picks, and this matchup, I believe beforehand, I think he injured his hand or overplayed or something, but he wasn't in good shape and he didn't play much. And it shows how important he was to this team, because without him, they just lacked that extra 10% on these aim picks, and they just lost them. They only started winning once they broke out of the control, and that actually started out working really well with that comeback, because 2 of their picks were on gimmick maps, the NoMod 3, the swing map, and the anti-mod. They won both. As soon as they changed tack, they found a lot more success. They stole the precision hard rock as well, which was really close. But yeah, without Mahmood, they did just lack that bit of power against Germany, and I think it really showed here.
My understanding too was that Akalabed was having like some tablet driver issues or something.
I heard that as
Yeah.
well. I'm
I
not
was
sure
hearing
about it.
that. I don't know the specifics. Also, shout out to the fact that this map had 3 maps in a row that were 54K and then 88K and then or 3 out of 4 maps. And then 2 maps later was 88K again. Like,
Yeah.
holy crap, this
Wow.
got close
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah.
Mhm. I want to give a little bit of credit though to the bottom half of Germany, because one of my predictions going into this match was that we all knew, like, yeah, Kriller and Whitecat, they have the potential to go absolutely nuclear in this match, be perhaps the 2 strongest players in the matchup. But my perception was that the bottom half of UK would be a lot stronger than the bottom half of Germany. Players like, say, Malteser, like Rudge, like I'm not gonna say Mahmood is in the bottom half of UK because he really isn't, but
No,
players
not
on
really.
Germany,
player
not
forward,
anymore.
yeah.
He is so good. But players on Germany like Tim Kackner had such a good match. That Hard Rock FC on that Free Mod 1. Just everyone on the German team really stepping up to the plate and getting the scores that they needed to support their big carries. And that's somewhere I thought UK would have the advantage on in this match, but ended up going so heavily in favor of Germany. I mean, dang, 6-0 run.
That was
Yeah,
crazy.
it was crazy. And I mean, despite the tablet issues and Mahmood getting a hand injury, I think you have to give so much credit to Germany. They played incredibly well to capitalize, and Whitecat and Curler obviously stepped up. Tim Kackner stepped up big time as well, was that kind of third best player by a pretty clear margin in that lobby. And so it ended up being the sporting combos that mattered. And even though kind of the 2 star players on each team, right? You have Kriller and Bubbleman, and they played as expected. They had insane scores, insane match costs, but
Oh, yeah.
neither of them really ended up being all that impactful in the grand scheme of things because they kind of just canceled each other out. And with those 2 canceling each other out, it came down to the support, and Germany had the better support. I will say UK did a great job starting to bring a comeback. For a second, it looked like they're going to be able to bring it back, which is really tough to do. When you go down 6-0, right? It's so tough mentally to kind of reset, recover. They did a great job to switch skill sets and kind of switch tracks. But personally, I thought they should have switched tracks maybe a pick earlier. It felt like after the first 2 picks, something was just not working, and they had one more go at it, which I think is fair enough. But maybe they had a better chance if they switched tracks earlier. Hard to say if it would have made a difference. Either way, well done to Germany. I think UK has had a good showing for themselves this OWC and could have a good showing this year. They've got a lot of newer players that have joined this year that are promising and improving quickly. But obviously, the big storyline we're pushing on the cast is that Germany, 4th place top 4, sorry, for 7 years in a row now is a really impressive consistency.
Oh, for sure. I just want to put a quick word in around the UK team because, yeah, I think there was a lot of hype around this team for sure. You know, a lot of us were bigging up the UK going into it, and they were certainly very strong. But top 6, I think, even for some of us UK diehards, is higher than what we thought. I think we were thinking maybe 7th or 8th would be like an excellent run, but top 6 is incredible, especially with some of the new players like Mahmood has played so well. Skiatso in his debut year has done so well. You know, some of the players from the last couple of years are really bedding in and really making themselves at home in OWC. So all in all, it's been a fantastic year for the UK. I'm so happy with the run they've had, and onwards and upwards, I suppose.
Onwards and upwards in another year, maybe, for the UK. Still upwards this year, obviously, right? Top 6 again after, I think the last time was 2021. But unfortunately didn't make it any further up than that top 6 margin. That honor belongs to Australia and Germany out of the losers bracket. So that's the last matchup in losers last weekend, was that Australia versus Germany match. And this looked pretty reminiscent of the other 2 losers bracket matchups as well. It was Australia off to an early breakpoint start, up 3-0 after the bans from Germany came through, and then off to actually a 4-0 start before Germany finally get a point on the DT1. But by that point, down 4-1, it's just so tough to come back from, and Australia end up closing this one out 7-3 as well. So quite a lot of relatively one-sided matchups in the losers bracket last week for one reason or another. And Australia, I think, with that kind of performance, you start to think about cementing them as maybe one of these teams that is now in that next tier above Germany, right, with the United States, with South Korea. How long will they stay there? Is it going to be a half decade or full decade tenure like Germany and the United States? Not quite sure yet, but Australia certainly are starting to make that case for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we're figuring that out tonight, right? Like USA versus Australia, that's 3 UTC, so we're in about 4 hours and 40 minutes away from that match. And I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this match is that underperformance MREC had against the United States in the semifinals, that was not to be expected at all, because MREC was an absolute dynamo in this matchup. I'm scrolling through the MP link. Was there even any maps that he didn't top score for them? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, he didn't top score Hard Rock 3, but he was like their second best and it was only 30k. So
yeah, he had the
really
top individual performance of the tournament, so he was insane this weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
top score Nomad 4 for them. Yeah. But that's it.
Yeah, this was just a matchup where it was MREC popping off, but also the rest of his team showing that they can back him as well. This was the biggest jump in skill cap so far this tournament, from semifinals to the final stage. And the backing players on Australia were up to the task. You see Zintek, Secret Box, you see Akins, they're all doing really well. All of their backup, all their supporting players, they're able to put in 4-man rosters at this difficulty. And I don't think that the jump to grand finals is as big as the one from semifinals to finals. So I know we're talking about the losers match right now, but that's, I think, the question going forward for Australia. Are they going to have that 4-man for those picks? And in this matchup against Germany, they absolutely did.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add on to that real quick. Secret Box also played 10 maps. Zintex also played 10 maps. Akins played 6 out of the 10 maps in this match. And then Sayo and O/Slash are the only other 2 people who played. So even just with 6 members, Australia still managed to 7-3 Germany versus the, it looks like 7 members from Germany who actually played maps in this match. So that it is... Their core is insanely strong, right? To be able to do that with 3 people playing every single map, that is a very, very strong core.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, to talk about Germany for a second, it felt like they went into this match kind of expecting to lose almost, right? They had some good scores. Whitecap played insanely well, but as a team, it just felt like they weren't there, especially compared to the scores they got in the Germany match. I mean, they low-rolled a lot of scores. They had 200k worse on the Nomad 1, which they would have beaten Australia on with their previous score. Same thing on Nomad 4. They got 200k worse, and their previous score again would have beaten Australia. So they could have made it a lot closer. They were 1.3 million worse on the DT2, but it felt like they just weren't there mentally. And even then, a lot of the maps Germany did win were incredibly close. 100, 200k, whereas Australia's wins were pretty dominant, closer to 600k, 800k pretty consistently. So Germany were definitely outmatched, but it felt like they didn't play up to their usual standard. Maybe they could have made it a little bit closer. Either way, certainly show that Australia are not a team to be taken lightly in the grand finals.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't happen. I mean, the first time, especially, I think Krilla had a great game against the UK. He still had a good game against Australia, but it definitely was, I guess, just not quite as good. Still pretty good, but yeah, I agree. I think Germany did low roll a few, which is unfortunate. But they went head to head on so many mechanics maps, which it's Germany, of course. They're going to pick into that. They are so confident on the mechanics maps, but against another mechanically focused team that seems to just scale harder than them, it just didn't work out. I think Germany would have had to high roll to steal those picks, and I mean, they could have attempted some of the more left field picks, but I'm not sure if that would have really worked out well either. It didn't work out when the UK tried it, and I don't think it would have worked out here because the Australia have done well on those when other teams have tried to abuse them, a la Russia. So it was kind of a catch-22 here, where Germany did need to perform well to really make a foothold in this game, and unfortunately, it just didn't quite fall for them here. I think that's just what it was, really. Just a bit less on the day, and it was fairly one-sided. Although they did kind of almost run the run back, kind of like what UK did to them near the end, making it a little bit tense, stealing a few of those aim picks, especially with that Tim Cagner Hard Rock FC. Miles touched on it on the free mod 1. What an FC that was! One of the scores of the tournament for sure from Tim Cagner on that free mod 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that map still doesn't have a 1. It has 1 Hard Rock FC, and that was from Hyok 8 days ago. So in preparation for the match,
Yeah.
right? And that is the only other Hard Rock FC is from Tim Kackner on that Fremod 1, which that map has 3 FCs total, now 4, thanks to Tim Kackner. So yeah, that map's quite
Insane.
hard. That map's quite hard. Until 10 days ago, it only had 1, and that was Cook Easy on Hidden. So
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I'll add quickly, Tim Kackner, who, I mean, maybe used to be better known as Zakarinya, has improved so much since last year. And if Zakarinya continues to improve and, Whitecat can have a similar showing to this OWC, Germany can potentially look to compete with the, top 3 of SK, Australia, US. It feels like they're just missing that one extra player that can compete on these late stage pools to be right up there with the top 3.
yeah. All right.
I mean, I guess real quick, I think they have it. I think it's just a case of, how much does Whitecat play? Whitecat can be that player if he put the try hard in, but obviously Whitecat's currently enjoying his life at the moment. I don't blame him. But it's nice, even though he doesn't play too much, maybe, it's nice to see him come in and still put in a very solid performance. But they have the room to have that player in their roster right now, but they need to, well, it's a case of you really have to try hard for it. But I wonder if we'll see anything else from the German side, because their tournament scene is very deep and very involved with their multiple tournament series they run. So there's every chance that someone could pop up in 12 months and jump into that roster.
Well, I'll have to see, because yeah, definitely Whitecat being the obvious example, somebody who just does not play the game all that much anymore, right? Obviously, still a very, very good player, but just not nearly as active as previously, and I think that's not really the case for anybody else on these rosters. Maybe Ciccone from Russia, but even then was still pretty active at the time. It's kind of similar to Ryuke on Canada, right? Just kind of fading away a little bit, not really playing the game as much anymore. Still enjoying it when possible, but not as high motivation, and that tends to do something to the scores in tournaments like OWC, right? When you're up against everyone else who is practicing and playing the game a ton, right? Being out of practice is definitely a drag sometimes.
Yeah, the play less method works sometimes, but only sometimes,
Yeah.
Only to some extent, right? If you play less and that's over the course of multiple years, well, suddenly that's not a break anymore. That's rust. That's rust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but hey, Whitecat, the number one skill set that it really affects is tapping, and he still got that 894K on the DT1. He had 95.6%, but he still definitely got that talent in him. It's just got to play Osu 4 times a week instead of twice. That's just the key.
You guys are playing Osu twice a week?
I was gonna say.
Unheard
I've been doing it once a week, man. I'm so awful now.
Once every half a year.
Oh,
that might be the secret.
All right, let's move on to the last match in the finals weekend. Obviously, the winners finals, South Korea versus the United States. This one was an absolute banger. This started off with USA breakpointing South Korea on Nomad 2, the alt map in this Nomad pool, by 87K, and then consolidating with their own DT1 pick by 1.6 million team score, which might be the biggest gap I've ever seen in finals before. And then these teams just started trading picks back and forth again through pretty much the entire match until USA picked Nomad 3, the swing swing finger control, aim control map. South Korea were able to take that by 480K. And then suddenly it was 6-5. With South Korea winning Nomad 1, USA last pick Hard Rock 2, and just like the break point at the beginning of the match, the break point at the end of the match for South Korea this time is by 84K. And so they ended up taking the match 7-5 off that ending break point of 85K.
Rectigon might have had the saddest miss I've ever seen in that match.
He still top
right
scored
before
in the
the
lobby.
break.
Well.
He still top scored in the lobby, but it was right before the break. He just misaimed the last stream, and if he hit that, I swear to God, it would have gone to tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to harp on that No Mod 3 pick from the US. Obviously, they got breakpointed and lost the pick by a fair margin, but I have to assume they low rolled it pretty badly. I mean, they got 2.5 million, which was the lowest score of any team on the tournament, and it was played by all 6 teams. So they knew other teams had better scores than 2.5 mil. They weren't assuming that kind of a 2.5 million score would be good enough to beat South Korea. So you have to imagine they had significantly better scores on the map in practice, and it just didn't happen in match. So I guess that's the defense for the US, even though I still am not a fan of the pick. I think they could have left it open, and South Korea probably would have picked it for them later if they wanted to play it at some point. Overall, though, I thought it was really cool to see so many different players stepping up, right? Putting up big scores on their respective maps. Tuna had 700k on the HD3, Yak had 700k on Hard Rock 3. Window Life had an 800k score. Fragrance had an 800k score. Karcher and Taquito both had 900k and 1 mil scores on various maps. So obviously, worst HR player, Utami and Rectagon were the 3 big names that stepped up in this match, worst HR player especially. But it's great to see how deep both of these rosters go, right? They have really well-built rosters that have the right fill players for any kind of map. And it's nice to see those fill players not just like putting up solid scores while the stars carry, but actually putting up carry performances on their respective maps. And I think that made the match a lot of fun. It wasn't just those 3 players carrying everything, but other players stepping up when they needed to.
Dude, I think the word I'd used for that match was unpredictable, because it feels like almost any of the maps, with the exception of maybe the faster maps being pretty USA favored, it was really hard to call any of the teams just winning a pick before it happened. It was just insane, and both teams just like picking the same sorts of maps, so it felt like absolute chaos. But somehow it seemed to play with minimal break pointage apart from a couple of key times. But just an incredible match to watch, simply because you were on the edge of your seat the entire time. You had no idea who was winning what. Back to that No Mod 3, honestly, I feel like out of all the maps in maybe the finals pool, that map was much easier to combo, and I think that USA score was very much a low roll. Imagine maybe in practice they were like 3-weighing that consistently, and then it just didn't happen in the match. It's just one of those. It's almost a consistency pick in terms of the comboing. The accuracy, a big deal on it as well, but the combo side, it's almost consistency. So it's unfortunate they didn't work out that way for the US, but it was risky, and I do agree maybe they could have saved that, or maybe even just avoided it, as you said, iFlame, just because against a team like South Korea, they could have easily just 3-way, 4-way that and just locked you out. There are probably picks on the board a bit more reliable than that, which we saw later on. I mean, we saw on the KTG to free mod, USA just devour that map. Shout outs to fucking 97% Hard Rock by Karma on that, which I know it doesn't sound like too much, but 97% on that OD10 with that circle size is just crazy, man.
Yeah,
just insane.
I want to talk roster construction a little bit real quick.
Yeah.
Because this has been something that obviously has been like, people have gone really back and forth on. South Korea has a roster where they're fortunate enough that their best players are in for all but worst HR player on speed, right? Like, you can just roll a roster of Forum, Tuna, Hyok, Page, and then like, if you need somebody else, they're there for literally anything. And it's worked out so well for them because they happen to be good at literally every skill set except for Forum not being good at speed. The United States, for the 8th, 9th, 10th, I don't even know, year in a row, has completely punted aim, right? The USA has never bothered with aim at all, and it's never really hurt them, and now it's kind of hurting them. Because they're coming into this matchup against South Korea, and you can't ban aim against South Korea, right? Because you have to ban, like, the forum maps, right? Because nobody competes with forum on the forum maps. But the United States then comes in and just gets absolutely shit-stomped on aim. Like, they lost the free mod one by 800k, they lost the Hard Rock one by 500k, they lost the No Mod one, the second-to-last map of the match, by over 1,000,000 points. So at some point, I feel the USA needs to find some players who are a little more consistent on aim so they can at least contest these. So it isn't just 3 free points for a team like South Korea that's very good at aim. Or, hey, guess who else is good at aim? Australia is really good at aim. Yes, they lost the match on that Nomad 1, but like, if MREC doesn't DC and they have one better performance on it, that goes to tiebreaker.
Yeah, and to your point, it really showed when they picked the Hard Rock 2 because it almost felt a little bit forced because you look at what was left in the pool. Free Mod 3, anti-mod aim map, you can't pick that into South Korea. Free Mod 4, fast aim free mod map, can't pick that into South Korea. And I think what I heard from the team is that TT4 was just so easy. There's basically a coin flip, so nobody's picking that. And
It's also aim.
The only exactly also
aim.
And the only thing they have left to pick is Hard Rock 2, which was incredibly close, but didn't work out for them. Although normally, if they could play aim, they would have at least had more options and not been forced into a single pick, which was incredibly contested.
I think the other hard thing about that is that South Korea is so good at aim that they gap every other team on every aim pick by several 100,000 points.
Yeah.
Like, the only team that beats United States on Free Mod 1 besides South Korea is Germany, and they had 2 runs to do it. There is no team that beats USA on DT1. The Hard Rock one, definitely they had a rough run there because they were number 6 out of 6 on that map. But then the Nomad one, they were number 2 on the map, ahead of Germany, ahead of Australia, ahead of UK. The only team that didn't play it was Russia that weekend. And the only team that beat the United States was South Korea, and it just so happened that they beat the United States by 1.1 million points, but they also beat Germany by 1.15 million and Australia by 1.2 million, and like every team by 1 million points. So part of it is, the United States hasn't really concerned themselves too much with aim. That hasn't mattered in the past. But even if you do concern yourselves with aim, how much of the roster flexibility are you willing to give up in order to get the strength necessary to beat a team like South Korea on aim, who are punting every other team out of the water on that skill set by 1 million points, right? Like, it's a bit of a give and take, and I don't know exactly how much you're willing to give for taking those aim points.
Well, and here's a weird thing as well, right? About the roster, like, flexibility and the last couple of players on the roster who are in for like specific things. USA essentially played a 6-man roster for this match.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure, like, they last picked Precision and didn't have Bashi in for it, who's on the team for reading and precision. Like, that's his skill set, right? He's one of very few people in the world who specializes in precision. Was not in for the precision map. And Kama played
Hard Rock 1, Hard Rock 2, right?
What's that?
Because I don't think Kama was in for either
Kama
of
played
the
one map.
He played Lollipop Sprinkles.
Kama played the free mod, and it didn't matter. Like, they win that free mod without his score. Like, he was like, and the Kama pick, I get on paper, but Kama is unfortunately really susceptible to what skill sets the poolers decide to focus on in a given year. This year, there just have not been Kama maps, so he's on the roster and just doesn't have stuff to play. Like, if you look at the matches that the US has had over the course of this tournament, there just haven't been maps for him.
Yeah.
And, like, you can't predict that going in. Bashi has been also, I feel like, not playing all that much. Somebody could correct me. It feels like I haven't seen his name a whole lot. And, like,
not
the map
for lack of maps, though.
Yeah, and, like, there's been precision, there's been reading. He hasn't, I don't know that they've played a lot of it, but, like, the one map that you 100% expect him in for in this match, he's not in for. Does he not get even 325k like Pez or 329k like Utami? I don't know. Maybe he just didn't have a good time on that map. What I wasn't in for it, I couldn't say. But I don't know. The US, I feel like, got kind of unlucky with their roster construction just holistically based on how this tournament has played out.
Yeah, lack of opportunities to use your specialists really sucks when you make a roster like this. Because if you pick the wrong specialists, quote unquote, not knowing that they are the wrong specialists to pick, then now you're suddenly not getting a lot out of the roster. But at the same time, you have to think that a lot of these people are also the best pick remaining. Bashi last year literally clinched the tiebreaker for United States. So I don't think you want to go without him, knowing that there could be similar maps again this year. And Kama has had some absolutely absurd scores, especially on stuff like DT Alt, which I think there is a Kama map in the DT pool this week.
There is a Kama map.
So we might be seeing a little bit more of him in grand finals, even though it unfortunately didn't work out in finals for them. I think we might be seeing a little more of both of these players in grand finals. So we'll hopefully get to see more of them.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else before we move on to predictions? Because we have 3 matches for predictions. So anything else before we move on there?
I think we're good to get some predictions going. I think we have 3 matches.
3 matches to go, 3 matches to predict. We're going to start off with the losers bracket finals, United States versus Australia. That's happening tonight, 3 UTC, so in a little over 4 hours. And then we're going to move on to the 2 separate potentials with each of these teams. So Korea versus the United States, if the United States win in losers bracket finals, and then Korea versus Australia, if Australia beat the United States in losers bracket finals. Miles, get to start us off.
And to piggyback onto the last point of the recap section, I'll point out the maps that I think are going to be really good common maps this week. So DT4, no good Magia. I believe he might be top 2 on that DT leaderboard off the top of my head. Absurd accuracy on that. He probably plays Cardinal Rave in the Hard Rock pool. And then the Bursty Tech map in the Nomad 5, also going to be very good for Kama. And I think he also fills in on maps like the Nomad 2 and perhaps the Hard Rock 2. And for Bashi Man, I think he's going to be asked to clutch again. But now on to this matchup. So Australia versus USA. Rematch from the semifinals round. USA narrowly escaped that. Australia won 4 maps in the DT pool and didn't win any other maps in the matchup. So if we look at the compared scores in the DT pool for finals, Australia wins Popipo by 400k, and the USA beats them on Hold Your Color, and there's no other data to go off of in the DT pool. But if you look outside the DT pool, there are many more compared scores that fall in favor of Australia now. The Hard Rock 2 going in their favor by 100k, the Hard Rock 1 going in their favor by a lot. So Australia in this matchup, I think they're really going to have to shake off that identity of being like, oh yeah, they're the speed picking team, but they're going to have to win on other stuff too. And I know we mentioned AIM earlier potentially being that skill set. I do think that is going to be their route into taking more points against the United States. But the other thing is I think that you have to expect this match to play out almost the same way that Korea versus United States did, almost in a very chaotic way. Because if you look across the comparisons, there are some maps that you would never expect Australia to really beat the USA on in a compared score. Like in semifinals, USA picks the gimmickier stuff, the alt control. But in the compared scores, Rat Park, the Nomad 2, Australia won that comparatively by 200k. The Nomad 3 also by 300k. Like, those are things that USA would definitely want to pick into Australia, and they're losing that by compared scores. But now we also did mention that Australia, they are kind of running with that 4 or 5-man core. You've got Emrek, you've got Zintex, Akins, and then you kind of rotate between Sayo and Secret Box, or Secret Box being in that core. It really depends how many maps are they able to get 4-man in for, because that dictates the nature of this match, because you do have the strongest player in Emrek, but if you don't have the support, you're not getting past the United States. Oh, yeah, and there's a prediction alongside this, right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go USA. I'm gonna go USA 7-4.
I already had it loaded. I figured you were going USA. I was just waiting for you to finish. Dooms, what's up, man? How's this match looking?
How's this match looking? Oh God, I mean, I agree with Miles in the sense that, yeah, if you're looking at like the previous match these two had, where Australia were relying on the speed, they're gonna need more than that to win this. And the question is, on this seriously hard pool, can they match US in terms of versatility? They've looked really good scaling on the last pool, which is pretty close to this, but I think even then, this is a pretty decent chunk up from that. I still think they'll be okay, and they're going to be relying on their core. Obviously, when you hit this sort of skill cap, you're looking immediately. You go look at Emrek and be like, this guy could very well be worth 2 scores on his own on certain picks. How much will that matter? But on the same token, US have players like Rectagon, players like Utami, who very well could be in the same boat. So you're looking at those super players to sort of just be worth so much more on skill cap alone on many of these picks. Australia could surprise us on a few of these left field picks, but my head doesn't see it working out in practice, and I reckon US are just going to outmaneuver them on this one. I reckon it's going to be like a 7-4. But there's a world where, especially on some of these left field picks, if Australia do bits on them again, and especially with a lot of these, even like gimmickier maps just being so mechanically demanding, and those players can just power through, even on some of those picks, I can see him stealing a couple more on a low chance, but my head says USA wins this 7-4.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Obviously, on one hand, you have Emrek, who was by far and away the best performer last week and has the highest skill cap of any player in the world. On the other hand, you have the entire US roster. I think it's interesting because US have such a deep roster, whereas Australia, they feel a little bit more set in their core roster. They don't have quite as much big supporting scores as US or SK can put up, right? They kind of run with their core 3, and then for the 5th, they switch between AKNZX, CO, and very occasionally O/ as well. Whereas US can, obviously, we just talked about how they haven't really played Kama and Abashi much, but we know that both those players have the ability to put up good scores on a grand finals pool from last year. And ultimately what it comes down to is I think US is and has always been the scaling team. We've seen in the last couple of years, they aren't unbeatable. You know, they sometimes drop rounds in the earlier stages. They lost to Canada in 2023, South Korea in quarters the year before that. But they scale better than any other team. Their supporting scores go so deep, even into grand finals. They have 8 players that can put up scores on grand finals, which is just unheard of for any other team. I mean, even South Korea this year, I'm not sure can say that about their roster. And that's why they've won from losers bracket 2 years in a row, because when you get to the hardest maps, you get to the grand finals, the USA shows up. And I think unless we see like an otherworldly performance from Emrek, which, to be quite clear, is possible. We have seen it before. This is definitely a winnable match for Australia, but I think for Australia to win it, they're going to need to high roll big time, and the USA is going to need to low roll. So I'm going to say US 4.
So here's how Australia can still win.
Hey, that's my job. Hey, that's my job.
Here's how Canada can still win.
Here's how Canada can still
France,
make their way back in.
I think the points have kind of been made at this juncture. I do think that people are underselling Australia's skill ceiling a little bit because they have more players than just Emrek and Box. Like Atkins, like I still can't get it straight how his name is supposed to be pronounced, but everyone's getting mad about people saying AKNZX, so apparently that's not right. But him and Zintex Sio/JGL Paler, who has not played much, so that one's a little uncertain. But they have a lot of good players on this team, right? Like they're a little, I think, stronger. It's not like they're a bunch of nobodies after you get past Emrek and a secret box. That being said, Emrek is the best player in the entire tournament, and if they're going to win, it goes through him. Right? Like if Emrek has the best match of anyone this entire tournament, I think that's what it is going to take for Australia to beat the United States. And otherwise, you know, even if he does, they could still lose. Like it's like Tungsten Arm O'Doyle here, you know, does something that has never been before seen in OWC as Australia loses to United States 7-2. Kind of how that one could go. But that's the world that Australia wins this in, and I just don't, unfortunately, necessarily see it happening. I do think this will be a competitive match, and it's funny how many of the same matches we've been getting, right? Australia versus United States the first time around, United States versus South Korea, kind of how we're seeing this match go again in the rematch, where it's like the mechanics team versus the other skill sets team, just time and time again this entire tournament. It feels like we've seen a lot of that. But I think the United States just has too many maps that are more favored to them in this pool. unless they like people have said, if they high roll or moderate roll, and Australia plays as kind of expected, USA just has the advantage by virtue of overall team. But if they low roll, Australia can win it. If MREC has an amazing day, they can win it. But I don't really, unfortunately, think that's the most likely outcome. So yeah, it's USA, and it's like 7-4, 7-5. Like it's one breakpoint, maybe two. It's close,
Yep.
but USA's I think pretty favored here.
So Dio, how does Australia win this?
Yeah, see, here's why saying here's how Australia can still win isn't quite your job, because I'm actually predicting Australia.
Wow.
Okay.
Here's the path to victory. The very obvious picks are, of course, the speed maps, right? DT2, DT3, DT4 in this pool. There will be some people who say, hey, but wait, isn't DT4 pretty good for United States? I think it's not bad, but you'll remember in semifinals, Australia was able to abuse United States on that DT4 with a pretty big score gap, like 1.1 million team score gap, as opposed to DT1, which the gap has shrunk throughout the tournament, and USA has actually outscaled Australia on DT1 as of last round. So I don't count DT1 among Australia's maps. Probably DT2, DT3 will be banned in this match. We may see a Free Mod 4 ban instead. That's the other good speed map in the pool for Australia. So those three are like the very obvious picks. Whichever one of those is left gets picked up. And then alongside DT4 is probably the second pick. No Mod 5 is probably something they leave up. And the rest of this pool is, for Australia, the Hard Rocks, like Hard Rock 1, Hard Rock 2, I think even Hard Rock 3 can be good for them. No Mod 3 and Free Mod 3. When looking at a lot of the head-to-head comparisons from previous weeks, straight up alt, not necessarily like aim control, finger control, hybrid stuff, not necessarily like density reading stuff. None of that's very good for Australia. Like the swing maps, for example, are kind of 50-50 with the USA. Australia has the advantage on finals, no mod 3. USA has the advantage on semifinals, no mod 3 when they faced off head-to-head. So I'm not going to count a lot of that stuff, but no mod 3, free mod 3 should be good for Australia in this pool, just looking at how the alt maps have gone throughout the tournament for both of these two teams. The Free Mod 3 in particular, because they can just go Hard Rock. It's CS 3.1. They can just go Hard Rock. And I think that'll make it a lot easier for this team to be able to take points. Alongside Hard Rock 1, going to be pretty solid for them. Very straightforward. Hard Rock 2, again, I think they have just a very, very strong Hard Rock roster. You compare stuff like the Hard Rock aim from last week, even Hard Rock in previous rounds, and it looks very good for Australia. That said, do I think this will be like a super Australia favored match? No, obviously not. USA has no mod 1, they have no mod 2, they have no mod 4, they have the whole hidden pool, they have DT1, they have Free Mod 1, they have Free Mod 2. Like, there's a lot of very good maps for United States in this pool as well. But if it gets to tiebreaker, MREC top scores tiebreaker, Secret Box can match like one of the USA carries probably on that tiebreaker as well. And I think that's just the difference maker. So I will go Australia 7-6 in tiebreaker. I think they have enough picks in this pool to trade with the United States. And then I think the MREC factor actually matters on tiebreaker here.
I think the big question here, though, like, so sorry about to cut you off there. I think the big question here is, with this pool being a lot of the maps, even some of the techier maps and more control-based maps, have a strong aim element, which naturally is going to happen at this star rating.
Yeah.
So there's a decent aim element to a lot of these left field picks, and I guess the question is, how much does that affect the US, where, you know, as you mentioned earlier, they have been bullied a little bit on aim picks, only a little bit. They're still, of course, comparable. They'll trade blows with Australia, but it's not their most comfortable place to be. And if that becomes a bigger factor here, then all of a sudden things look a little bit less, I guess, secure for them on some of those US picks. But that's we won't know until we see it in practice. I don't think it will be much of an issue compared to the other skill sets there. But if it is, Australia could definitely pounce on that on some of these more contestable picks, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against the US, but Australia definitely have their chances in this match.
Also, Australia has the best player in the world and the best
They
player in
do.
the tournament.
Yeah,
The best
of all
player
time,
to
yeah.
ever touch the game. Like, Australia.
You can
Australia.
never count 'em
Australia
out.
is like 2016, 2017 Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James. Where I shouldn't say that because that actually sells the rest of their players short compared to those Cavaliers teams, but you get the
No, I
idea.
think that's right.
Where it's like when you have the best player in the world on your team, you are always going to have a chance.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, you are always going to have
Yeah.
a chance
Yep.
because they can just show up and drop like 37, 16, and 9 and give you a chance, even against the 2017 Warriors. Like
Emmerich 4.5
Yeah,
match
but-
cost in this losers bracket finals is about to go
Yeah, no.
nuclear, and y'all don't
Yeah.
know.
One thing I'm seeing in chat though is it's like Utami confirmed to be back. Can Utami face up
Utami's
to
not as-
Emmerich?
Yeah, Tommy's not as good as Emmerich. I'm sorry. Like
No.
he's
But what if
really
he
good.
does?
He's
But
really
what if he
good.
does?
He is
He doesn't
back,
need
but he's
to be,
not as
though.
good as Emmerich. Just because
Utami, they need Utami plus Rectigon to match Emmerich. They don't need, just Utami to match Emmerich.
I'm just saying, but what if he does? But what if he does?
Then,
yeah.
Miles, I will give you a high five.
Real.
That's
All right.
real.
Real. All right, one more quick prediction. Are there any maps in this pool where we might see JGLF or Pala, who have not played
Ooh.
many maps at all?
JGLF.
AGLF
Reading?
Snowdrive.
Yeah, I was gonna say hidden 2 Fremont.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hidden 2 Fremont 2. Palar
Yeah.
maybe on Hard Rock 2, possibly. He is on this roster basically for the Hard Rocks, but at the same time, I think the rest of the roster probably is just better on that. So I don't know that we'll see Palar. But JGLF, possibly Fremont 2, possibly Hidden 2. Yeah.
I think it's a good
Which-
shout.
Yeah. Boy.
But dude,
Hidden 2
Hidden
is so
2's
hard,
getting
man.
banned though, man.
Hidden 2's getting
so
banned.
hard.
Sorry, JGLF. That's just banned out.
I can't see anyone picking Hidden 2. Like,
No.
no one.
Australia
They're
bans
just-
it against USA. USA bans it against Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a conspiracy to
Uh,
keep JGLF out of OWC.
No badge because he didn't play any maps in the finals.
Oh my
Ouch.
God.
Brutal.
All right. So we are going to predict both potentials for the grand finals. So we're going to start with the projected less likely outcome, which is, of course, South Korea versus Australia. This would assume that Australia beats the United States and then is actually better than the USA on this pool and gets to face off against South Korea. I'll go first for this one. As the Australia believer, I unfortunately don't think the way they beat USA is viable against South Korea. They have all the same speed picks, but the alt picks basically disappear, leaving them with kind of like Hard Rock 1. Nomad 5 is much better for them in this pool against Korea than United States, so I think that's a more obvious pick. But like Hard Rock 1... I don't think you pick Nomad 1 against the winner of Arliss Cup. I don't think you pick Hard Rock 2 into South Korea generally. I don't think you want to pick Hard Rock 3. DT1's better. DT1's better for Australia here as well. But they lose so many other picks that I just don't think it's possible. And so I think I go South Korea. Assuming best case scenario for Australia, I think it's South Korea like 7-5. But assuming there's any breakpoints, say on DT1 or something, then it's like 7-4 or 7-3 in the first round of grand finals. No bracket reset.
It's interesting, this matchup, because like even if Australia were to beat the United States, I still think the United States is better against South Korea on this pool than they are. Like, I don't know, it's just a quirk of how this pool and everything goes. So yeah, I think Australia just gives up too much to South Korea relative to what they give up against the United States. And again, like, it's Emmerich if he can do superhuman things and get decent support, but against South Korea, I just think they've got too much talent on that roster, man. This one is South Korea like 7-2, 7-3. I don't know.
So how many tapping maps are there in this pool? Does anyone know?
4 or 5? Like,
4 or
there's
5?
Let's see.
There's Nomad 5, Hard Rock 1, DT2, DT3, Fremont 4.
Fremont 4.
All right,
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
So
Nomad 5 is a weird one though, because it's like a hybrid map, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
got some speed elements to it, but it's got tech and
Yeah.
name elements as well, so it's not really a speed map in the traditional sense.
If you're just counting maps that are better for DT teams, Nomad 5, Hard Rock 1, DT2, DT3, DT4, DT1, and Fremont 4. So like 7 there. Best case scenario. But there's 2 bans.
best case. There you go, 2 bans. I mean, that makes my prediction easy. I'll make it nice and mathematic. We'll say 5 tapping maps, subtract 2 for the bans, give Australia 3 points. I think, unlike the US, South Korea's not going to get any breakpoints on tapping. Not that the US will either, but at least they have a chance to. Unfortunately, South Korea is just way too good at everything else. So once the tapping is done, I think Australia is probably just getting rolled on, aim, alt, control, probably tech, because South Korea is just so insanely good, and so I don't see that one being all that close if it were to be the match.
Yeah, I mean, the win condition is if Australia get here, they would have had to have beaten the USA on some of that tech, some of that control, which would buff their chances against the South Korea on those sorts of maps. But even then, I still don't think they would beat South Korea on those sorts of maps, because I think it's just a tough skill set matchup, and certainly on the hiddens, and certainly maybe on like the FEMOD 2 and things, I can't see Australia stealing those off South Korea. And the aim matchup, which Australia would be pining on to take a win against the US, it ain't going to work against South Korea because they have just been dominating teams on aim. So it's just an unfortunate case of Australia kind of getting countered a little bit in this matchup. But if they could beat the US, they can steal some of those picks. But I still don't think it'd be enough to take it to bracket reset. But I'd be generous and say it'd be like a 7-4 or even a 7-5 if they're on that sort of form. But it's still South Korea though. It would have to be.
Okay, well, you're leaving it all on me now, so here's
How
how
Australia
Australia
wins
can
it.
win this. So, if I'm the biggest USA fan and Australia is able to beat the USA, then I've got to rep them against South Korea, right? Like, let's look at this map pool. So, theoretically, we play through the match. South Korea is going to ban out 2 speed maps, DT2 and the DT3. Rest of the tapping in the pool, we have to theorize in this matchup that drops to Australia. So, free mod 4 goes their way. No mod 5 goes their way. We'll say even Hard Rock 1 flow aim streams goes their way. But the place where I think they need to go to win this match is the aim. The aim maps in the map pool, the DT1, the No Mod 1, the Hidden 1, the Free Mod 1. That's the place where they would have to muscle points away from South Korea. And let's go through this hypothetical. If Emrek were to match Hyok on every aim map or beat him, would Australia's backing players be able to beat South Korea's backing players? If you answer even a maybe, if they take 1 or even 2 of them, suddenly the matchup gets opened. You even have picks like the DT4, where I think they're going to be able to dominate. So I see no reason why Australia, if they manage to beat the USA, don't have enough picks to at least force the tiebreaker, because I think they definitely have a route in this matchup. Is it far-fetched to say? Yes. Is it unlikely? Yes. But is it there?
Here's your black pill, Miles. Here's your black pill. Australia number 1, number 2 on the Hard Rock 1 last week. South Korea number 3. Australia number 1 on the Hard Rock 2 last week. South Korea number 2. So that was Hard Rock 1, Hard Rock 2. No Mod 1, yeah, sure, they lose, but that's just the one map. Hard Rock is more maps in the aim category than just the No Mod 1. So it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah,
Probable no,
I mean,
but possible.
Possible.
No.
Like, you can't write them off. You have the best player in the world. Like, yeah, you're saying Hyok on aim, unbeatable, but Emrek on anything, unbeatable. Like, let's just see if the kid has a good day.
Well, until he has to play, 4 people who are also great at aim.
Yeah,
But,
dude, shut up.
This is where Australia wins OWC, and Miles is just the GOAT,
That's true.
I'll be checking those pick'ems though, Miles.
Okay.
All right. So that's the first potential that we wanted to talk about. That would be 10 UTC Sunday, a little bit earlier there for North America.
USA to win.
Hell yeah.
Yep. When this one would
Not
be
at
at 3 UTC Sunday,
Much
South
better.
Korea versus the United States. I'll go first again for this because I know Miles wanted to save himself for last here on
Miles
this
is
one.
ready.
I'm giving it to South Korea again. I bet on South Korea to win this tournament at the start of the entire tournament before we even saw qualifiers, and my opinion has not changed. Before the winners finals happened, my thoughts were, I don't know, it could go either way, but I think whichever team wins in winners finals will be able to win the tournament, and that's still my opinion. South Korea has bracket reset advantage. They have already beaten the US head-to-head in a late stage round. The South Korean team has never beaten the US in finals or grand finals before this year. They beat them in semifinals, right? They didn't even beat them at all last year in 2023, and they still took them to tiebreaker in that bracket reset. Now that they've actually shown that it's doable, I think their chances are way better. Yes, it was close. Yes, it was very competitive. Yes, this pool is harder. But the South Korean team has finally done something that they have not been able to do, has done something that no one has been able to do since 2017 with Poland, 2019 or 2018 with the UK, which is beat the US in finals or grand finals. This is the only time it has happened. Last year they went down to losers bracket in quarters, the year before in semifinals. This is the first year they've actually lost a match in the late stage since 2018. So I think this is much more doable. There's already proof in the pudding. They've already beaten them once. And I think the same strategy works very well on this pool. They are structured pretty similarly. There's no swing map in the Nomad pool, sure, but that didn't really matter because instead there's the density reading Nomad 2 and then the same kind of alt map as last week in Nomad 3. So this pool is very, very similar in structure, still very good for South Korea, and I think they'll be able to take it again.
It's the first time it feels like the USA's aura of inevitability has been shattered a little bit in a very, very long time. Both in terms of the actual roster construction, where like it kind of feels like this year they don't have that guy, right? It was like you had Vaxe, you had Idki, you had Fancy Lad. Now it's like you have Utami coming back, you have Rectagon, who's been so good all year, but is just like he's playing well, but it's like he's not the feared final boss that I think we kind of maybe expected him to be. I don't know. South Korea finally broke through a wall that's kind of just stood around the United States for pretty much a decade now. I don't know, man. I think South Korea finally managed to build a roster that can beat the United States on a grand finals pool, which is something that nobody's been able to do for a very, very long time. They just have an answer for pretty much everything that the United States could bring. Yeah, they'll have their speed maps. Yeah, they'll win stuff. But it doesn't feel like no matter what. I think the turning point to me in deciding on this matchup was last week when it felt like the USA didn't have a good pick left towards the end of the match. You and I were discussing before the match that we were going to get to a point where the USA wouldn't have a pick. And I have not felt like that about a United States team since their dynasty began. It has always felt like they had another card up their sleeve. They had something that would win them the match. And now, this particular South Korea roster against this particular United States roster, it doesn't feel like that's the case anymore. And as Dio said, South Korea proved last week that this team is beatable. And I think there's a good chance this goes to a bracket reset. Like, I think this could be...
I agree, yeah.
I think asking it to live up to last year's grand final might be a bit much, but I think there's the potential for that to happen, where this could end up being 7-5, 7-6, or similar again. But I think this time South Korea has built a team that's able to win, and I think they've built a team that will win.
Oh, man. It is a very tough one. Again, on one hand, it was incredibly close last year, South Korea, obviously bringing them to tiebreaker. They've added Hyuk since then. Fragrance of Page has really stepped up. And so South Korea's gotten first seed as well, right? It feels like they've gotten so much better. They've beaten the US on a later stage pool, that being the finals last week. And a lot of people have South Korea as the favorites going into this tournament, right? But on the other hand, it's so hard to bet against the US, right? They have won so many years in a row because no matter who they're up against, no matter how close it is, they pull it together in the end. I mean, they've had some close ones, right? Tiebreaker last year, where they won from bracket reset. I mean, even going back to 2018, they went tiebreaker against the UK, which got bracket reset, and they still won. They just seem to clutch up when it counts. And I do think we'll see bracket reset. I think it is going to be, I'm going to take 7-6 for the US in the first match. But ultimately, I'm going to have to go with South Korea 7-5 in the bracket reset. I think this is the year that we see the dynasty crumble. I think South Korea has improved so much. And as you mentioned, 2NG, I think United States don't have that same kind of clutch player that they've had in previous years, whether it be Fancy Lad, whether it be Vaxe. They're going to have to rely a lot on Utami and on Rectigon. And South Korea just feels like they're so good at pretty much every skill set except for speed. And when you have two bans, you can mitigate that pretty well.
Good God, man! How do you predict this? I felt like when I was watching that winners final, it just felt so hard to call, and both these two teams just like to play similar things. I suppose I'll keep it fairly short and sweet because you guys can keep the stats. I prefer the magic. I'm here for cinema, so brain off. But a quick moment with my brain on. I kind of, because we were talking about Australia, or I mentioned about Australia, if they beat the USA in the other potential, that, you know, that would open up some of the weirder picks for them, but they still kind of get gamed on the aim. I think USA get gamed on even harder on the aim here than Australia would in the their potential, and that's going to hurt on a lot of these maps that have a strong aim component that are outside of the aim picks. So my head's telling me, in all honesty, that this might potentially be going to South Korea without bracket reset. But I can't bet against USA in grand finals. Again, these guys know how to win these matches. I expect them to pull something out of their hat to take it to bracket reset. They have versatility to steal left field picks on this sort of pool. But I'm feeling the bracket reset win for South Korea against the USA. I'm feeling it. I'm not confident in it, but I'm here for the cinema. That's all I want, because this has cinema written all over it. I'm just here to enjoy the ride. That's all.
No,
Dude, fanboy, you got this, buddy.
Super quickly before Miles goes, I know you said you prefer the magic to the stats, but even the stats say this one is super close. The head-to-head from finals, 7-5 for South Korea. Both teams had 6 players in the top 30 individual. I think 4 players each in the top 20. So even the stats have this one as being incredibly close.
And Miles, I don't know if you're going to mention this, but there's been some crashing out going on social media for some of these players. So we'll see if that plays a factor. We'll see if that plays a factor.
We have crashing out.
That is not serious.
There's crashing out from both sides, and I can tell you, like 100%, Pez's tweet was like a bait.
I know that's bait. That's obvious.
To an Amamiya Kokoro tweet, but yeah, I mean,
bait used to be an art form. What have we become?
It hurts to see so many people here not believing in the United States, and you know, as someone who's notoriously on these casts has always believed in the United States, I think I'd just be a broken record to speak on this myself. So I'd like to hand the mic over to a great American who knows a thing or two about winning. So I'd like to give the warmest welcome to the Full Circle podcast to former President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Is this where the national anthem plays?
I don't know.
What's he doing?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Let me just say, it's good to be here. Now, you might not expect it, but today I'm speaking to you from Miles's apartment. And I'm here to talk about something that speaks to the heart of the competitive spirit of this great nation of ours. That's right. I'm talking about the OWC World Cup. Now, back when I was president in 2015, I had the honor of witnessing something extraordinary. 2 determined teams from the United States stepped up, faced the best in the world, and outlasted China in some of the most thrilling grand finals matches I've ever seen. These matches could have gone either way. There were moments we stumbled. We lost break points from unfortunate misses. Russ Bell, well, let me tell you, that guy played maps like it was his sole mission to carry the day. His strength was overwhelming at times. But let me remind you something about Americans. We don't back down. We don't surrender. When those teams faced adversity, they didn't fold. They rose. They regrouped, clawed their way back, and took those break points right back. And when it all came down to Furioso Melodia, they delivered. That tiebreaker wasn't just a game. It was a moment that would go on to define nearly a decade of dominance for the United States in OWC tournaments. Now today, the team looks different, but the heart remains the same. The torch is carried by Taquito, a player whose skill and leadership inspire confidence. But even Taquito isn't alone. He's joined by an incredible lineup of teammates who each bring something special to the table. Hydrogen Bomb, an explosive player whose mechanical dominance strikes fear into the hearts of others. Window Life, a speed demon who will be relied on heavily in this difficult map pool. Decaden, a dynamo with many talents who can steal picks from under the opponent's nose. And Kama, whose high accuracy was built for this stage. Then there's Bashi Man, a player with a knack for clutch performances. Utami, whose resurgence has been nothing short of magnificent. And Pez, brilliant, dynamic, and always ready to step up in the big moments. Together, they form a team that embodies the resilience and excellence we've come to expect from the United States. So let's cheer them on. Let's remember that the spirit of competition, the same spirit that has propelled America to greatness in every field, burns just as brightly here. Because when the stakes are high and the world is watching, you can bet on the United States to rise to the occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honor having the president of the United States, former president of the United States, on Full Circle. Pretty incredible.
Thanks,
Obama. It's a good thing you actually got Obama for this. Yeah. Otherwise, you might face some allegations. But solid work getting Obama on, man. I mean, that's crazy work.
like the election's over, so he wasn't that busy. So we were able to get him on.
That's true.
Yeah. Crazy. You have so much room in your place, a whole audience. That's a nice
dude. Yeah, so you don't even need a score from me. Just put the freaking flag there.
Oh, we already know. Don't worry about it, bro.
You go.
I know. I got you.
The score is going to be America to 0.
Yep, that's. I had to try so hard not to laugh. I hope I was gonna AI generate a voice. But I didn't have the time.
Oh my god!
Freedom is undefeated.
Miles,
Freedom
I just want to say,
is undefeated.
I just want to say thank you very much for avoiding the inevitable screenshot that will be coming out by the end of this weekend. Thank you.
I don't think we get any screenshots, right? We didn't get. Well, no, we did. Did we 5-0?
We 5-0. Or no, we did not. We did not 5-0 any match. We did not 5-0 any match.
Not this time.
Success.
No. Wait,
we won.
Success. Are you sure? Hang on. UK, Germany.
No. This weekend. This weekend.
This weekend.
Yeah. We got quite a few screenshots.
The UK Germany thing. We got tricked by UK Germany. We got tricked so hard.
They played us like fiddles.
They did. They generally had the worst scores of anyone in the entire tournament by a lot. The SK debuff was so real.
Yeah.
Is that the new USA debuff? It's now the Korea debuff.
Yeah.
It has been transferred.
The aura has been transferred. All right, that'll be it. That's everything. Thank you, Obama. Thank you, T1G. Thank you, iFlame. Thank you, Doomsday. Thank you, Miles, for coming on. Thank you all for watching. Losers bracket finals, USA versus Australia tonight, 3 UTC. That's in 3 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. Tune in. Grand finals after that, either 24 hours later or what is that? 31 hours later.
Yeah.
So make sure to tune in. It's going to be a banger weekend. It's grand finals. Watch. Goodbye.
What?